All right, let's talk some Jets football now with Nick Faria. Hey, Nick, good to see you.
Great to see you again, Carolyn.
So, a lot of hype around this Jets team heading into this season. First of all, what's been the reaction from kind of inside the team to Hard Knocks, the HBO crews being there, and what are people saying about what we might expect?
It's kind of interesting because, Aaron Rodgers spoke a couple weeks ago talking about how the team was really forced to do so in joining Hard Knocks. But then head coach Robert Saleh comes in day one and comes in the shirt of "I love Hard Knocks." So the players and the coaches may not enjoy what's going on right now in terms of the added media scrutiny, but at the same time, they are moving forward as if everything is, typical process at One Jets Drive. And the one thing you see right from the get-go, the minute you walk into the facility, this is a changing of the guard. This is not the same old New York Jets team that's hoping for a break here and there in the regular season, that is hoping everything goes their way and there aren't any injuries. This is an organization and a team that is primed and ready for a championship run, and they know it. The players know it, the coaches know it, and the franchise quarterback certainly helps as well with that.
It's fascinating that you say that there's so much confidence on this roster heading into the season. How much does Aaron Rodgers' arrival have to do with that, do you think?
It is everything. I would say close to 100%. Obviously, they have a lot of good young players, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, that have kind of started that transformation of the Jets team that can't get out of their own way to true, contention-seeking franchise. But Aaron Rodgers changes everything, and you saw it within the first week of practice, where the way he talks to people, the way he talks in meetings, it is a fundamental difference than any quarterback in New York Jets history. I would even go further than Joe Namath, just because of how Joe was within the media. He was always larger than life in his overall personality. Rodgers, it seems, is all about football, wants to talk football, and is trying to do his best to get another championship under his belt. And he's doing a fantastic job within the first week of getting these younger players acclimated, not just to the system that he learned in Green Bay, but acclimated to the success that they could have going into the regular season.
How much of this do you think is Rodgers' sort of own hubris, wanting to prove that he's still fully capable of winning another Super Bowl or adding that to his legacy?
I think any quarterback, this stage of his career, you talk about the Tom Brady's, the Drew Breeses of the world, the Peyton Mannings, anyone who gets over the age of 35, 36, they're going after something. There's a reason they want to keep playing. For Tom Brady and a lot of these other guys is to win a championship, and I think Rodgers is along that same line as well. I think he really wants to prove that he is still a top three, top five quarterback in the NFL and really put himself on the map of a potentially top five quarterback of all time. His numbers have always been fantastic, but the one problem for him has been in the postseason. He hasn't been able to add up to that postseason success he had in 2010. If he's able to do that with the Jets, it will be as impressive a feat as Tom Brady going down to Tampa. I know Tampa Bay, when Brady came in, had the lowest winning percentage in NFL history out of any team, but this is the New York Jets we're talking about. This is a team that has been snake bitten for 50 years since Joe Namath's guarantee. So if Rodgers is able to do that, I personally think it would be far more impressive than Brady in Tampa Bay.
What an interesting time for him to come to this program. I know you wrote about the defense. All those pieces were there in place, and yet the quarterback position just let them down so much. If what you're saying is true, that he is motivated and motivating some of these young stars, this could be a really interesting season. What about the pressure on Robert Saleh? I mean, how much do you think he's feeling like it's time for him to make a deep playoff run or else?
If he feels any pressure, he's not showing it. He's very calm, cool, and collected, really showing why the Jets hired him in the first place. And coming from San Francisco, this was a high-energy guy, very smart football mind, but can get the most out of his players. Through 2 seasons, we have seen inklings of that, but the talent really wasn't there for them to take that step. This year, I think, and specifically with how he talks to the media, this is a guy that, yes, and I agree, this is win or find a new job if Robert Saleh is unable to accomplish his goals this season in New York. I don't think he lasts another year if they can't get to the postseason. But the pressure's not showing. And the pressure's not showing for a lot of players. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, two of the offensive and defensive Rookie of the Year winners last season. You expect expectations and pressure to be mounted on them to take that next step. And they haven't shown it either. I think the way Saleh has run this organization, everyone has bought into this point. And it's something that very few coaches have this early in the offseason, and something that will be very key going into the regular season for New York.
How much support can you gather, does he have? How much support does he have from the organization? Is it playoffs or bust in your mind?
It has to be playoffs or bust. And I wouldn't even say like, oh, the organization is saying do this now or you're going to be fired. There's none of that kind of thing hovering over their heads of what if this doesn't work. And I think that shows why Joe Douglas is one of the best GMs in the NFL and very highly regarded. Woody Johnson has really said, even when they acquired Aaron Rodgers, he said this is not a win now testament. We're not looking to demand a Super Bowl and demand the playoff berth, but we expect it. So while expectations can come in and anything less than a playoff berth would be an abject failure for New York, it's hard for me to say that Saleh would be able to survive another season, specifically if they have a very similar season to what the '08 Jets went through when they brought in Brett Favre late in training camp. They started out, I believe, with something like 7-4, 8-3, and they finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs in the last game of the season. If something like that happens, I highly doubt Saleh returns. But you never know with a regular season. Injuries happen, circumstances beyond your control happen. But it's hard for me to say he survives after year 3 if they do not make the postseason.
What have you been able to glean, if anything, in terms of chemistry between Aaron Rodgers and some of these key offensive weapons that he's going to have? Specifically, let's take Garrett Wilson, for example, a second-year receiver that could potentially be a really nice tandem heading into the year. Have you been able to get a sense of some of the chemistry that's developing offensively?
Absolutely. And you look at the stars, and obviously on a football practice, you look for the plays that gets everyone going crazy. All the fans are very excited. The media teams are putting out highlights left and right. You're looking for those type of plays. And it seems that at every practice, Garrett Wilson is making one catch, one route that everyone is turning their heads over. This guy is being compared to Davante Adams for a reason. He is a supreme route runner, excellent hands, and very, very quick. He is the perfect package of a wide receiver, and I think you see why Aaron Rodgers was very happy to come to New York in the first place. Again, we talked about it, a team that hasn't been to the postseason in over a decade. Why would you want to come to a snake-bitten franchise like this? It's because they have a number one receiver who's about to take that next step, and according to everyone, is already in the process of taking that next step. But other guys too, Tyler Conklin, the tight end, Alan Lazard, the free agent signing, who came to New York not because of Aaron Rodgers, but because of Aaron Rodgers. You looked at it from that perspective in that relationship. But those are three guys right off the bat that have stood out. And you also have some under the radar guys like undrafted free agent Jason Brownlee, who has had a tremendous start to training camp as well. Do I expect him to be getting starter reps? No. But there have been a lot of guys that have really shown out early on, specifically at the receiver position. But Garrett Wilson's at the top of that list. He has just been phenomenal.
Is there anybody else, maybe in the running back core or some of these receivers that you mentioned that have surprised you or that could maybe not necessarily be a starter but make an impact that you did not see coming?
Well, the big question is going to be Michael Carter. With Breece Hall on the PUP list, we don't expect him, at least until they feel comfortable easing him back to 11-on-11 work in training camp as he recovers from his ACL injury, which leaves a very big question out there. Dalvin Cook is a free agent running back. He has had a tremendous career with the Minnesota Vikings, over 1,000 yards each of the last few seasons, a Pro Bowl running back. If New York were to go and acquire him, that would mean Michael Carter did not show enough in training camp at that point to warrant more playing time and allow Breece Hall to comfortably ease himself back into the starting rotation. Hall is the number one back. That is not to be, argued against. The Jets want to use him as much as possible, but easing him back in to start the regular season coming off that ACL injury is very important. So to me, the big question is, what will Michael Carter look like throughout preseason, throughout practices, throughout joint practices over the next couple of weeks to show that he is more than capable of being a feature back if they want him.
And developmentally, from what you can observe, in terms of the offense and the defense, who do you think is further along? I know you wrote a piece on the defense, and we saw some real standouts last season. Which group looks better to you so far?
I'm always going to say this, and specifically with that question, I have to temper expectations a little bit, because in training camp, we have to remember the Jets have a new offensive coordinator. So outside of Aaron Rodgers and Alan Lazard, those are the only two guys that know the system that Nathaniel Hackett wants to run. So because of that, it's going to take a couple practices, a couple weeks to get the offense fully acclimated. So right now, I would say the defense is ahead, but that's expected at this point in the offseason and during training camp workouts. You expect a unit that returns their defensive coordinator, that returns a bulk of their starters to be 100% really locked in on what they want to do from a schematic standpoint. And they've shown that so far. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed have been excellent. The defensive line, to me, has been terrific. Easily the biggest group of standouts throughout training camp to this point, throughout the first week. But the offense has had their share of wins as well. They had a big couple practices Saturday, Sunday, where they got a lot of success in the red zone. So you see everything coming together. It's just a matter of it's going to take time. So while the defense is going to be ahead now, that could easily change in a couple weeks.
All things considered, Nick, what should Jets fans expect? I mean, I know there was so much excitement when Aaron Rodgers came into the fold. We've seen some of the stars that they have that are young players that we know can be great. I mean, what is realistic?
That's always the difficult question, especially you look at the AFC in general. You have Patrick Mahomes, you have Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Tua, all these guys that are terrific quarterbacks, having teams that are just loaded offensively all across the board. But the Jets have the one piece that I think a lot of these AFC teams are missing, and that is their stalwart defense. If that defense plays like a top 5 unit and the offensive skill guys produce like they did last season, an average Aaron Rodgers probably wins them the division. And I think with him at quarterback, with all the expectations around this group, I think a division appearance or a playoff appearance and playoff victory to get to the divisional round is the minimal bar. Win a playoff game, win the division, get to the divisional round, because then once you get to that second round, it becomes based on matchups, injuries, and all those other things. You need to get into the tournament, number one. That should be absolutely bare minimum. Anything else, and heads are going to roll in that front office. But to win a playoff game, the first one in 10 years, that should be a base expectation for this team that is loaded across the board.
From what you've seen from the defense, Nick, is it possible that that group will be better this season than they were last season?
I think so, and I think a big part of that comes down to Jermaine Johnson. The team's first-round pick last season was overshadowed because of what happened with Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner and their dominance. He didn't really get a lot of true playing time for a spot starter. He only got a few clips here and there, got a couple sacks throughout the season. But he looks fantastic in training camp. He's been the talk of a lot of key players like Quinnen Williams who've all said this guy's about to break out. I could very well see if he gets close to 10 sacks this season, the entire defensive line could push the 50, 60 sack total. They could easily win a few games on their own accord without needing Aaron Rodgers to help them out in the long run. This is a very good group.
And since we're in the trenches, there's a couple battles going on the offensive line too, right? Walk us through where those competitions are.
Sure. I'll start at center. So right now we have Connor McGovern, who's brought back in free agency on a one-year deal. He's going to be competing with Joe Tippmann, the second-round rookie. Both of them are going to get their chances. I wouldn't be surprised if Connor McGovern starts week 1 and they integrate Tippmann later on in the season. And then the last battle, and I think it's the most important one, is at left and right tackle. Dwayne Brown, the consummate professional, the franchise loves what he did last season in fighting through injury, but he's also closing in on 40 years old. And 40-year-old left tackles do not have a very rich history, if you will, and you just take a look at what happened with Jason Peters in Philadelphia the last couple of years with him. But he'll be competing against Mekhi Becton, and all the questions surrounding Mekhi. If he ends up losing this battle and he has to be put on the right-hand side and play right tackle, is he going to request a trade? Is he going to want to stay in New York if he loses that position battle? That remains to be seen, and it's very early in the process. But another thing I think is important is Dwayne Brown hasn't really been able to practice. He's been put on the PUP list just because he's dealing with his shoulder injury that he suffered with last season. Then you have Mekhi Becton, who has not played an offensive snap in really 2 years. The first practice he had this year in training camp was the first practice rep he had in over 365 days. That's a long time for a player to really get reacclimated into the offense. So it's going to take some time for both of these guys to show they are truly worthy of starting at left tackle. So this position battle may not be decided until the end of the preseason when Saleh really has to make a decision. But they're very confident, both players. Both of them have a lot of starting pedigree. Becton, his rookie season, was very, very good outside of his injuries. And Dwayne Brown has been a Pro Bowl left tackle for a very long time now. If I were to guess, I would say Brown is probably the favorite at left tackle, Becton at right to start the season. But if Brown's not healthy, they are perfectly comfortable moving Becton to the left tackle and Max Mitchell to right. They're very confident on both sides, but that really is the two main position battles throughout camp that Jet fans need to look out for.
I really appreciate the context, Nick. I know a lot of people are excited. I mean, how much fun has this been to cover so far? I know we've got a long way to go, but there is such a sense of anticipation around Rodgers and what he's going to do with this group. He's very good at kind of spreading that us against the world mentality, giving guys a lot of confidence, especially for some of these young stars. I mean, he could really be the difference maker that you suggest. How much fun has it been to just be around a group that seemingly on paper could be a playoff contender?
I kind of compare it to the Philadelphia Eagles last season, where when you walked into the building, especially around the mid-season point, you knew there was something special going on. And really, you kind of see that with the Jets right now, and it's still very, very early. And I want to preface that right away. Everything seems special right now, an injury or two to key players, and that goes down the drain. So right now, with everyone healthy, with everyone expecting to be healthy, this has all the makings for a special team, because no one is talking about Super Bowl and we need to go to the Super Bowl, we need to do this and we need to do that. That's part of the goal that everyone is talking about within the organization. But right now, everyone from Tyler Conklin, Jermaine Johnson, Quinnen Williams, Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, they have all said it starts day one. It starts with our daily preparation and preparing for the regular season, making sure we do everything right, both in the classroom and on the field within meetings. And you see that throughout. It's a very strong similarity to defending conference champions. And if it's something that you look at early on in the season and they start 4-5-0, the hoopla is going to get a lot bigger, and a lot of more excitement is going to go on with One Jets Drive. But this team certainly seems like they are prepared and ready for that media hoopla and media circus to follow them along.
And yet you get the sense that maybe we won't see too much given away on Hard Knocks. I mean, from what you're kind of describing, it seems like they may try to keep things as close to the vest as possible and maybe not be as wide open as some of the other teams we've seen.
Yeah, and you kind of saw that last season with Detroit. Detroit was actually the first team that denied Hard Knocks access to when they cut players. And the Jets are doing the exact same thing this year. They feel that, the humility of it and really just based on humanity, you don't want to show a clip of a guy at his lowest point in his life. And a lot of these guys have worked all their lives to get to this point and achieve their NFL dreams, and a lot of them, unfortunately, won't be able to. So for the Jets, it's very smart for them to say, listen, we care for our players. We care for our players' mental health. We're not going to put them through that. We'll give them snippets of some key things, and we'll talk about the decision-making going into the final roster process, but we're not giving you all access pass into what we need to do and how we're going to communicate with the players. I think it's a very smart move, and it's a very important move for NFL organizations that kind of handle their own social media videos as well. They have the One Jets podcast, the One Jets show, that really has done a great job of just getting in the behind the scenes look of what goes on at the facility. So a tiled back approach isn't the worst thing in the world.
It's going to be really, really fun to watch. Nick, thanks so much for the insight. I know you're out there all the time covering the team. Really appreciate it.
Of course, Carolyn. Thank you so much.